Welcome everybody. This is sadly, our last Water Ambassador webinar for the 2021, our year, so to speak. And thanks everybody for coming out for this one. Let me just go ahead and get started. We'll do a quick introduction here. I think most of you are pretty familiar with Zoom at this point, but if you're not, I just want to point out a couple of things. We have muted everybody's microphone, and we can unmute you maybe at the end if there is time to speak, but we'll go over that in a second. But if you are connected to audio and you can't hear us, if you see that little, let me move my cursor over here. If you see that little caret or arrow type symbol, that can help adjust your settings. We do ask that you turn your video off, and that helps with the bandwidth issues and being able to hear see our speakers slideshow pretty well. Are we recording right now, Lisa? Sorry, I can't see that.
Yes, we're recording.
Okay, and we are recording. So if you want to see who else is here, you can see click on the participants, and you'll see everybody that's joined in. Please use the chat to ask questions. You can ask them anytime during the course of the webinar, but we will get to them at the end of our presenters talk. And then of course there's the leave meeting button if you do need to leave. We don't want you to leave, but if you have to. So let's see, what's the next thing? Yes, as I mentioned, we are recording this currently, and you can visit our webpage at Martin County Extension at the URL right there to view this and other past recordings of our Water Ambassador webinar series. And we'll put that in the chat as well if you don't already have that bookmarked on your browser. But all the year's webinars will be on that page. And then please, again, as I mentioned, please use the chat feature to ask questions. As I mentioned earlier in the chat, this is our last webinar for the year. We do have one more event for our graduates, and this is a field trip. We try to do a field trip sort of at the end of our year each time. And if you want to learn, if you haven't tuned in to this webinar, can't remember when we did that, but I'll try to.
It was March. I think it was March 9th.
Back in March, we covered this project. This is a Martin County CRA project, and it's really neat project. And we're going to do a tour of this project on Thursday. So, and they're kind of mid-construction. So it's kind of a neat time to see this project. So you would call or email Jordan Pastorius. He is the CRA manager for this particular project, and the information is there. Again, we'll post that in the chat as well. So with that, we'd like to get started with our last speaker, Mr. Zachary Hughes. He is a senior project manager for Martin County in the Division of Ecosystem Restoration and Management under Martin County Public Works. Zach is comes from us originally. He got his degree in environmental science from SUNY Plattsburgh, State University of New York in Plattsburgh, and has been working with the county as a project manager, senior project manager since 2017. Currently, he's managing or co-managing over 20 conservation sites throughout Martin County, including management of specific ecosystem restoration, conservation land management, and public access projects throughout the county. And so he's got a very wide, diverse background in recreation management, invasive species, riparian assessments, water quality projects, and also prescribed burns. And he came to us from the county, from the Bureau of Land Management, way out in Colorado, where he was responsible for managing over 380,000 acres of land, working on invasive species. He was the invasive species coordinator out there. So we're very glad to have him with this rich experience. And so I'm pleased to introduce Zach to you all, and here to talk about the Jensen Beach Impoundment Mangrove Restoration Project, which started about right when he started, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and give it up to Zach and let him get his talk set up.
Yeah, thanks, Vincent, for the excellent introduction. Unfortunately, my video is not working in this conference room, but we'll just dive right into the PowerPoint here and get this going. Just let me share my screen. It gets in the way.
Yep, we're seeing it. Just needs to be on slide.
Yeah,
Zach.
Let me do it like this.
There you go.
All right, it's looking all
perfect.
right.
Yep, perfect.
All right, so this is the Jensen Beach Impoundment Restoration Project. And as you just said, Vincent, yeah, I came into this. I was hired in July, and this occurred during Hurricane Irma, or the initial response or issues out there started, I think, I'm trying to think when Hurricane Irma hit, but it was only a few months after I started my position. And so for the folks that are not familiar with this area, this out here at Jensen Beach Causeway, if you're headed out to the beach, to Jensen Beach or to the Hutchinson Island, and maybe some of you folks have noticed as you're going over this bridge here and you're kind of looking over the horizon, you might see a bunch of dead. So right here is we call it our south cell. This is our 50 acres. And the whole impoundment itself is actually 150 acres. So all here in green is 150 acres. So I'll kind of dive into kind of the transition, a little bit of the history, and also a little bit of information on the mosquito impoundment. And then I'll move forward into kind of what we're doing about it and what the project is all about. So the Jensen Beach impoundment contains over 150 acres, as I said. This provides critical fisheries habitat along the Indian River Lagoon. As I said, we lost over 50 acres of primary red mangroves habitat. And this is kind of the abstract, but it was due to high water levels and poor water quality. The purpose of this project is to restore hydrology and improve connection between Jensen Beach impoundment, not only the 50 acres, but also we saw a few issues over here on our northern cell, as well as our northeast cell, and I'll dive into that in much more detail further down in this presentation. So this is kind of what I was brought into. I moved out from Colorado, and then within a few months we had Hurricane Irma. We had gusts up to 100 miles an hour and up to 21 inches of rain in spots. Not so much where we saw within the impoundment area. I think most of the rain occurred in St. Lucie County. It was record rain up there. But we did receive a significant amount, I believe 8 to 10 inches during this storm. So this is a picture of pre-Hurricane Irma. Everything was green. Right over here is your southern cell. Over here is your northern cell. And this is directly after Hurricane Irma. You can see in this photograph that we have some wind shear defoliation. But everything pretty much held up as far as the impoundment. We didn't have any breaching except for, just the typical type of breaching that we see during high tide events or king tide events. And this is what we saw 1/11/18. So just 3 or 4 months after. And so that had us scratching our head, like what happened out there? And this is what I also want to bring up. This is the same date as that last picture, just showing the southern cell. But we also have issues over here in the northeast, as well as you can see some wind shear in the northern cell and some defoliation as well. However, as you can tell, the southern cell is definitely the cell of concern. So I kind of want to go back into some history. This is 1940, and you can see, you know, this was created in 1940, and these channels were created, you know, by a sizable dredge. Think like a huge bucket dredge, maybe almost like a mining dredge. And so these channels are pretty deep. And this was to kind of create that, you know, flood this area out for mosquito control, and also to drain lands to build on. Here's another picture that has a great highlight of the Jensen Beach Jensen Beach impoundment area, and this is what you're looking at. Just interesting photos for sure. And this is pretty much right after the hurricane. And you know, let's go back one, and then let's go to pretty much present day. And as you can tell, there's a lot of development that occurred. Probably a lot of plugged up ditches. Obviously, JBC, Jensen Beach Club development was created. I believe that was late 90s, I believe. And so a lot of these connections or this flow have been impeded. And so this goes into what is a mosquito impoundment. Mosquito control impoundment is a salt marsh or mangrove forest with an earthen dike around perimeter that allows the area to be artificially flooded during mosquito breeding season. This is generally from May to October. Our mosquito control folks, they do their management around that time as well. And so really this is to treat the salt marsh mosquitoes that will not lay their eggs upon standing water. Instead, you know, they prefer, pretty much to put it simply, they would prefer to lay their eggs in moist soil or mud flats. So the idea is to, you know, flood these areas so that they don't lay their eggs. And so you have to maintain a certain amount of level of water within these impoundments during this time from May to October so that they don't lay their eggs there and hatch. And here's a good illustration. It's kind of a, you know, exaggerated illustration, but this is kind of the idea of the impoundment. You know, you have your earthen dikes around here. Generally, you have some type of spillway, or, you know, just with higher tides, you can have, you know, your spillway come over top. The idea is from May to, you know, October is to flood this a certain level so that there's no mud exposed, so that they don't lay their eggs, so that if they don't, you know, stop breeding. And here's kind of just a side cross section of a typical impoundment within the IRL. You know, you have your lagoon over here. This is your mean high water. Usually your roads on here. And then you have, you know, on your higher elevations, you have your white mangrove. And your lower elevations, you'll have your black mangroves. And for the most part, what we're dealing with is kind of in this area here, we have the reds. And then I'd say for the most part, on the left-hand side, we're with whites and blacks. And then for the purposes of our impoundment, we're dealing with mostly, I'd say about 95% of red mangroves. And here kind of just another visualization. This is taken from the impoundment of actually FOS impoundment of kind of what we're looking at. So you have your marsh over here, perimeter ditch, your road, and then this is your IRL, your lagoon out here. It looks like maybe a living shoreline project right there as well. So And it's just the same illustration, just to give you guys an idea of how these are built. So progress so far, we'll get into that. So we immediately, and working with mosquito control, and as well as some of our engineers, internal engineers, as well as FWC. Right after this happened, we immediately installed some staff gauges. Unfortunately, there's only one staff gauge out within the impoundment. We ended up installing 6. And what that does, it gives you a starting point for operations of where we need to be at, some type of, elevation that we can kind of monitor the water levels for not only just, the high tide events, but also, for mosquito controls management and operation. And right there, that's just a picture of me pondering of what to do. Like I said, just coming on the job, it's like, this is what I'm facing. So that's just a picture of kind of the kill that we saw and how thick it was. What we did as well, right in early 2018, we hired a consultant to evaluate any water and soil contaminants that would cause such a large mangrove die-off. So we wanted to eliminate any type of contaminants that could have caused this. And so this is what we monitored for. This is just a map over here that shows the locations where the water and soils were monitored. We monitor for dissolved oxygen, hydrogen sulfide, volatiles, phenols, petroleum, hydrocarbons, metals, organochloride, pesticides, and PCBs. And what we found from that is just a picture of what we did some additional sampling. That analysis of the laboratory results indicate that a point source of contamination is not a likely cause of the defoliation and mangrove die-off observed in the South Cell and portion of the North Cell. Instead, these results suggest that die-off appears to be associated with water quality, quantity, and duration. So I coined a term, acute drowning of these mangroves. So with that said, we eliminated the contaminants, and I want to harp on that word quantity. So in addition to Hurricane Irma, which we received, pretty significant rains, we also had record high tides just a month after, as well as record rains, I believe up to 17 inches within this location, to where this southern cell was inundated. So that definitely was one of the issues. So coordination is key. I can't stress this enough. I'm sure might be a few of my counterparts on this presentation, but we coordinated with ourselves internally, like I said, with our engineers, mosquito control, and other fellow coworkers within ecosystems, as well as FWC, FOS. We also reached out to our adjacent counties, St. Lucie and part of Palm Beach, to get some insight. And what we found is that we needed to clear existing channels of dead and down vegetation, dredging of existing channels. And then with this, a conceptual design was developed, and this involved several field visits. I'd say many field visits, coordinated meetings, and we also used some references from drone and LiDAR surveys. And so we'll get into here. So right after, this doesn't illustrate it well here without the defoliation, but this was the current conditions right after we had Hurricane Irma, as well as the high tide and heavy rainfall. And so what we had is we only had a 12-inch culvert here in the southern cell that was collapsed. Then we had a 30-inch culvert that was operating. There was also a culvert here, which is not illustrated, but that was also not filtering out well. And then we had a 42-inch culvert here. However, we have this kind of meanders around here and filters out this way, to where it was actually getting blocked up by sand. So with that said, when this hit, we only had really an operational 38-inch culvert between the north and the south cell here, as well, and then this 42-inch culvert that leads out to the IRL. And so I think it's the next, this illustrates it here. So these little dots here were the existing culverts at the time of, right after Irma. And so in the northern cell, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 culverts that lead out to pretty much the IRL. Lots of flushing going on here. At the time after Irma, we only had really functioning one going out to the lagoon and one going to the north. So with that said, the key terminology or the key factors is that you don't want to hold water into a mangrove, especially a mangrove impoundment, more than 72 hours or beyond, above, for lack of better words, they're breathers. So the best analogy I thought the other day when we had some significant rain in Stewart, when I walked outside my townhouse, was that I saw my wife's flower pot right in front of me, and I was looking at it, and that held water for quite some time because we had, I think it was 5 inches of rain. And so you can just kind of think of this south cell like a big flower pot, and there was too much high tide going on. There was too much rain from the Irma, and also too much rain following Irma, that this was just holding way too much water, and there wasn't enough release. So, we had, don't have pictures in this presentation, but we had water all the way up to the road here. So, and then talking about LiDAR information, we actually were able to identify that I'd say the majority of this southern cell is about 1.5 feet below sea level. And then the road is about 4.5 to 5 feet above sea level. So that amount of water was held there, I believe, up to 2 to 3 weeks. So we were kind of stuck in a rock and hard place. And unfortunately, even though the reds are pretty resilient, they weren't able to survive. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what happened. And then to quickly address this northeast section, that we believe is because of this development, because we used to have, if you remember back to the 1940s, 1950s, this used to have channels moving down to the south. So there was plenty of flow. So this is kind of cut off. So one of the things that we identified in our conceptual, as well as our final design, is that we need to address this northeast cell. As you can tell, it's hurting. We actually got some ponding, visual ponding, and so it's just kind of in rough shape. So we need to kind of make this connection. Our hope is that we're able to connect it from off this pump area here and extend it out and create kind of more of a flow. Okay, so then, so what we immediately identified is that we needed to install 3 internal culverts. We were fortunate enough to receive some state funding for that, $75,000, in which we contributed. The county itself contributed another $75,000 to install 3 culverts from the north to the south, as well as an additional culvert out to the IRL. Full design and permitting was implemented in 2019, 2020. Martin County survey, permitted, design, installed the 3 culverts in 2019 and 2020. This is just a more specific design of design plans. You can see we identified these 3 internal culverts to be installed from the north to the south. So we're going to kind of treat this more like one big system instead of being so separated. And then we also are going to install this external culvert I hope to get this installed relatively soon. Actually, the COVID crisis, along with manufacturing, has limited that because of the lack of aluminum as well as fabrication, because it has to be a custom-made deal. So I finally got my pipe. I'm just waiting to get it installed. So that should go in within a month. Here's just a picture of the installation of the internal culverts. Pretty big, as you can see. So this is the risers. This is where you would actually put your wooden features to manipulate the elevation of the water between the north and the south cell. And this is just placed on the berm before installation. That's a better profile picture there, where you can see this riser. And like I said, mosquito control come in here. They'll put their boards in. They can manipulate the water levels when they're doing their control. Another picture there. And that's kind of a closely finished product. Actually, I wish I had a more up-to-date picture. It's looking pretty good in here. Actually, the mangroves have already popped up here. Then we actually installed a little bit of a gate there so that we can put some educational information on. Yeah, and I can't stress enough, FWC has been great in this partnership. They were able to find some additional funding for modeling and dredge design. Modeling showed that the installation of the full 4 culverts and corresponding dredging that from the die-off should not occur again in the south cell. A full dredge design was produced and is currently undergoing permitting. That's at the core level right now. And so it came up here with a bunch of modeling, a bunch of LiDAR information, a bunch of consultants, is kind of a plan of action of what we're going to dredge. And we're looking at dredging 13,000 linear feet and or 20,000 cubic yards of material. And the way we're going to do that, we decided is that we're going to do suction dredge cutter heads, and we're actually going to bring in some trying to think of what I just lost my train of thought there. We're going to bring in some containment units. That's what I was looking for. To actually, we're going to put those containment units up onto the berm or the berm road, and then we're actually going to truck those in. They're actually dropped, and then we suction dredge into them, dewater on the actual road, and then we're actually going to remove those, and we're going to put the material into the landfill if we cannot use it somewhere else. So we'll have to do some testing for that, so on and so forth. But so again, we really identified the southern cell, as a priority, and then that's kind of priority number 1, phase 1, because that's kind of what we got most of the money or most of the direction was for. However, like I said, we really, as you can tell, we need to address this northeast cell as well. Just talk about grant success. We received $75,000 from FWC for a state wildlife grant for installation of the 3 culverts and also monitoring efforts. And then Martin County was successful in securing $1 million with the help of FWC. Like I say, they put a lot of plugs in for us. From NOAA for the installation of the external culvert to the lagoon, the proposed dredging, additional modeling, permitting, and monitoring, and channel maintenance. Talk about monitoring real quick. So 6 sites are monitored for water level, salinity, pH, temperature, and DO. Katie, my counterpart, myself, we've been doing that monitoring. We go out there every 2 weeks. We also added some turbidity in January 2021. Again, this is just going back to the beginning where we did our initial containment monitoring, where we did some water and soil sampling. And then we also have great partners from FWC that, they're really taking the bull by the horns and doing pretty long trend monitoring transects. I might have Erin speak on this a little later once she gets on, but you know, it's a partnership between FWRI, Coastal Wetlands Program, and FOS. The soil pH, soil strength, soil stratification, vegetation composition, and canopy cover. Post-construction surveys are going to continue in 2022 and summer 22. And additional funding from FDP and IRL NEP to assess hydrology and water quality through September of 2022. And then 3 HOBO water level loggers installed in December 2020, and DOC nutrients and surface and pore waters will be assessed. So I'm not well versed in this, as you might be able to tell. So, you know, some really awesome monitoring going on as far as some trend data. And it really truly is kind of like a research project. You know, I mean, I foresee this kind of being something that other impoundments can look to if they somehow come up with the same kind of situation that Martin County did. What's really cool is we kind of started doing some drone vegetative surveys. We had some consultants do this for us. And these photographs that you see here, we actually did some drone surveys in 2019, as well as late 2020. But the photos you see here are actually from 21. And it may not look like much to you folks, but actually I see 100% improvement from what I see for 2019. And, you know, you can see a little bit of, you know, green coming in throughout. Again in here, again in here, and in here. And this is interesting here, and this goes back to an elevation. This elevation, it was one of the highest elevations. When I say high, I think it was 1.2 or 1.3 feet. However, this survived all that the water inundation coming in. And then this kind of gives you a good representation down here as well. You know, you can see this all survived, and obviously around the actual road itself, the mangroves survived as well. So this kind of goes to show the elevation theory and how it's pretty compact. And there's another great visual. You know, north cell is all coming back pretty well. We're seeing some scattered, you know, mangroves coming in here, recruitment. Here's a good example, you know, from the 2020 to 21. It may not look like much, you know, it's not the best imagery down here. It got a little distorted. However, I just love seeing this in here. You know, we're seeing it throughout. And then when you get on the ground too, and you start, you know, swamping through there, I mean, I'm seeing recruitment throughout this impoundment. So we're sitting in a really good place right now. And I just foresee, you know, putting this external culvert in, we're going to get, you know, we're just going to get all types of flushing in here. And then in addition to that, once we get the dredging, we're going to, you know, we're going to see the flushing just improve. And yeah, lastly, we did this in transects, so that, and I'll show a video here shortly of some of the drone footage, but we flew it in transects, and we actually stopped at each of these points. We had the drone stop so it could take a photo. And so it's kind of like doing you know, a photo plot survey. And I'll just talk quick about some recreation that's included in Jensen Beach Impoundment. I know this is the water ambassadors, and I know folks love to go out, you know, stand up paddleboarding and kayaking, and so we just, you know, I think folks might be aware of this, but we just improved this parking area here, and put in a new pavilion and launch project. And this is just a quick design of it. That's what we did. And really the reason why we did this, let me get to the before picture. This is the kind of the previous condition. And this was something I noticed too, as soon as I showed up. I mean, we had lots of garbage. People are getting stuck in here. We actually have some nice seagrass throughout here. So we had boats going in there, and I know it's taken away a launch, but lots of garbage, lots of partying. So what we did was we figured, it's time to kind of make this more of a structured recreation site. So we installed a pavilion. We also installed, if you think about this is catching whatever contaminants we have running off in cars or whatever else. And it goes into here and it flows in here and just sits there and seeps out into the, in a structured way instead of it all just flowing down this way. It does limit, putting a trailer in here, but, from what I've heard, it's been great for the paddlers out there. And then also too, this picture doesn't really show it well, but I really wanted to promote this hiking trail, as we call it, or bike trail. You can bike or hike it. And it's a complete loop now, so that folks can enjoy it. Just a word of caution, during mosquito season, it's not much to be enjoyed, but this past year, especially in COVID and stuff like that, people are using the heck out of it, so it's been good. And there's a more finished picture, and that's the pavilion. And then we also did, I failed to mention, we did a little bit of riprap there. And then we planted some nice native vegetation, some spartana, some molly grass in the back here, as well as some other vegetation. And like I said, we linked this site to our paddling trail. We placed these signs throughout anywhere, there's a put in for the paddle trail. So there's something cool for folks to check out. And let's see here. So that's it for that. But I can go ahead, Vincent, and I can start sharing the drone survey. It looks like we have about 20 minutes left. So I can bring that up and start, I can kind of describe the drone process quick, but I don't know how many questions we got.
Looks like we got, I threw one out there just to, because I know we had talked briefly yesterday about that, and it looks like Aaron McDevitt from FWC answered that. And I was just asking if fish are being monitored, and it looks like, just like you mentioned, Zach, this is kind of turning into a really cool research project. And she mentioned, she wrote that FWI is conducting some acoustic studies, some targeted acoustic studies on snook and tarpon to document their utilization of the impoundment pre and post restoration. There is a question from Nick Musia on what he read. I'll read it right here. Any thought on viable species monitoring, such as clams, oysters, juvenile game fish, something before and after the dredging to proof of concept? And I think Aaron's earlier answer kind of addresses the fish part. I don't know if clams or oysters are part of that monitoring as well. If Zach, if you or any other people on any people part of the team that are on this call wouldn't mind answering that. And Zach, go ahead and play that video. And if anybody has any other questions while he's playing that, feel free to type that into the chat. But Zach, if you want to go ahead and maybe just do a little voiceover on the video, just to.
Yeah, this is kind of starting from it'll be from the western edge, the northwest edge, and moving towards the south of the impoundment. And as you can tell, like I said, I'm just happy to see this recruitment here, especially when we get a little closer, when we do some of the flyovers where we stopped and really kind of, take the picture there. But, especially in this area here, we're really seeing some recruitment and some improvement. To Nick's question, yes, and I think Aaron mentioned that FWC, FWRI are going to be doing some, or they already have started some fisheries surveys and some acoustic work. They placed several receivers at the impoundment already and did a bunch of tagging. And initial results is that they have caught snook and tarpon. Juvenile, which is good. It shows that it can be a nursery or is a nursery. And I also believe they caught some mullet, which is pretty important. You know, that's kind of the food source you're looking for these game species. Right here again, that's that, you know, that elevation thing. And then, you know, obviously when we overlay our LiDAR on this, you know, it really shows that, you know, the elevation was key into having these mangroves survive during this event.
Hey, Zach, just real quick, I got one more question from Caitlin. Have there been any have there been any planting efforts, or is this just relying on natural recruitment?
Excellent question.
And just to follow up real quick from Greg Braun, to add to that question, is the natural recruitment primary seedlings, or is there some recovery of some trees that had not died? Yeah, what was the overall mortality when this happened? Were there any survivors?
So the survivors were all about the elevation, like I said. So we had pretty significant mortality. What you're seeing there is, you know, a lot of these areas are, you know, it's been since 2017 or, you know, late or early 2018. So it's kind of these small areas you can see right here are actually just mangroves that are, you know, three years old.
Okay. And is this, and mostly the recovery you're seeing, and that's primarily natural recruitment?
Correct. So,
yes. Okay.
With the installation of those 3 internal culverts, like if you were to take a walk out there and if the tides are just right, and then especially if mosquito control has, you know, a few boards in to manipulate their water elevation, you're going to see those propagules just, you know, they're just waiting to come into that south cell, especially, you know, just depending on the tides. And so if you open those boards up, or even if it, you know, they'll come right over and, you know, release those propagules from the north to the south. It's pretty significant. So it's been all natural. We did talk about doing some helicopter seeding, which would be pretty cool. And that's why, you know, kind of this drone imagery is key, because we can kind of identify these areas. We're not really seeing maybe some growth. We can really kind of, you know, focus our efforts in there if we want to do some helicopter seeding. I think it'd be kind of a cool project in itself, to see what type of, you know, comeback you could get.
Cool. Yeah, you know, related to what you mentioned about the riser boards to control water levels, Bill's got a couple questions. They're both related to each other. How deep can the water be for red mangroves to survive? And what depth of the water causes red mangroves to die? Go ahead. And then we got a follow-up question from Lisa.
So, you know, it's all about, you know, so the red mangroves are pretty resilient, right? So they're able to take quite a bit. They actually need to be inundated by water, you know, a certain amount. And obviously the reds, as you call them, reds, you know, I call them reds have legs. So they're up a little higher. And so they're actually, you know, usually located alongside the lagoon, you know, in areas like that. So it's really about that. I've heard anywhere from, like, if you inundate them above their breathers, I don't have the word off the top of my head, for more than some people say 72 hours, that can actually start to, you know, start to see some kill. Now, like I said, I think we're looking at 2 to 3 weeks of them being above their breathers, not able to, you know, do their processes. So, I mean, I think that's where we really saw the, you know, the kill off, unfortunately. So,
yeah, and they have pores in their root structure. I believe the term is lenticels, and that's really where that gas exchange
I'm trying to remember
occurs.
that one, but yeah. It's actually, that's a great, it's actually like a pore. Those are, you know, and like I said, we had, you know, Irma did some damage, stressed them out, but like I said, we had those king tides, and then we had up to, I think it was up to 16 to 18 inches within a week period or something like that. And so if you think about it too, we also had maybe potentially some fresh water on top of there.
Yeah.
So that's another potential.
Okay.
But really, in the end, it was all about getting these culverts in, improving the hydrology, and we intend to keep on improving that with some dredging, and also just some vegetative clearing out of these channels. So we're pretty confident, as we're already seeing, that we're able to, be a success on this project.
So
Zach,
go ahead, Lisa. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, we do have a question about the dredging. Rachel asks, why are you doing the dredging? Is it to maintain the area for mosquito impoundment, or did the models suggest that dredging was important for mangrove recovery?
No, the models also suggested, because we have some, these channels, as you see, you can't really see it here, but first, we really got to get these, you'll have blockages. And some of these channels will be deep in sections, like especially the perimeter, maybe where some work had been done. But we'll have some of these areas, especially like maybe right in here, if I remember correctly, where this is actually kind of blocked up by sediment. It's not flowing. So then you'll know, especially with this dead and down, we're a little afraid. We don't want this to go into ponding. So we want a way for this water to go. We want a good flow. So that's why, we'll get in there and we'll get the vegetative downed, dead mangroves out of the channel. And then we'll go and assess what needs to be dredged. And we had identified through some of the modeling, we also did a full survey throughout here. So we have some cross sections of these areas. So we know how deep that sediment is in spots. And it ranges anywhere from a few feet deep to I think up to 13 feet of sediment in spots. But what we'll probably end up doing is just, picking a level so we know we can just get some good flow through there. We just don't want things to get bound up again and have potentially, if you think about it, we get some ponding here and then we get some more flooding areas here. We might lose those mangroves in the future. So to keep those channels clear is kind of the priority. As far as mosquito management or operation, it should improve their operation as well to get water in there quicker, and also get that nice clean, kind of the key is a good 6 inches across that mud so that the mosquitoes don't breed. You can see here too that, we have this is all GPS. We have, georeference. You can stop this and georeference this wherever you want. So it's kind of a cool way to do vegetative surveys, and probably the easiest if anybody's been trying to get through the mangrove forest here.
Will this is Lisa's question earlier. Will any of the dead biomass have to be removed?
So we talked about that and we thought about that, and one of the things that was brought up was to potentially go in there and do some shredding. Now that's easier said than done as far as costs. Our initial design actually included that, but we were looking, once we did the math, to be able to shred and then to actually put the spoils from the dredging into that shredded area as kind of more of a experiment thing. But once we got into permitting, DEP was not happy with that proposal. To put it simply, they'd rather just have, that would involve a full restoration plan to go there and shred. Because when you go in there and shred, that's considered, because you're leaving that material there, that means that you're actively filling that area. We'd also would have had to somehow get the machines in there, and that required building berms, which require filling in wetland, and so it was we decided not to go that route. Another idea was thrown out there was to do a prescribed fire out there, which I think they've done maybe once or twice, maybe up north is what I read. But it's just logistically, and also that stuff really wouldn't really burn or carry. You'd be dropping so much diesel there that would just not be environmentally sound or reasonable. So another thing I'd like to bring up too is this is a big example of losing 50 acres, and a lot of that has to do with the lack of culverts and necessary hydrology. But if you look on Google Maps, you can actually see there's a few spots throughout Hutchinson Island where this is occurring. One right to the south of it, right below actually where that new parking lot is, you can see some dead mangroves. There's also some dead mangroves over by the roundabout of Jensen Beach, if you go around there. And as well as down south, it's actually on private ground. And, just doing a little bit of research and looking at it looks like it's a hydrology issue as well. And of course we got, record king tides, record rains. So it's just something to be wary about in the future. I think this might be something more we might see more in the future. Just make sure, I guess, in the end that you're, if you're dealing with impoundments, that you're looking at your hydrology now before, things get a little worse potentially down the road.
Cool. Thanks, Zach. So there's a comment here from Greg, with this project, does not bode well for resiliency to sea level rise, and other impoundments. And hopefully this project is a good example, expressing the need to work with mosquito control folks to prevent this from happening in other impoundments. So I think that your point fits in well with Greg's statement there. Lisa's throwing up the survey, so please fill that out, and kind of helps us with our programming for next year as well. And if anybody that's on the call on the webinar right now, if there's anything you'd like to see for next year, any particular topics, please post those in the chat. If there's anything we haven't covered that you'd like to see us cover, then please write something in the chat, and then it's great to get your input on for our future webinars. There's one last question that I see here from Bill. I do not know how high the breathers are, or the pores or lenticels, probably in those mangrove roots. Can red mangroves live in 6 inch, 1 foot, or 2 foot, or deep water? Bill and Zach, you can chime in, or anybody else can chime in as well. The issue probably isn't so much the height of that water, but how regularly those pores for gas exchange get exposed. So they are intertidal plants or trees, and so they can't be inundated for too long of a time, continuously for too long of a time. So that's where that sort of speaks to their ability to occupy the intertidal zone where they get flooded but at the same time get exposed at low tide.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was like I said, it's a duration of time that their breathers were not allowed to be exposed. So the water level is kept too high for too long.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, if anybody has any ideas or topics they'd like to see for next year, please do type those in the chat. Or you can email Lisa and I'll put my email in there.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of research going on from multiple partners. And, maybe in the future, like I said, I like to have a little more trend data for all the water quality, a lot of the vegetation. You want to give it a few years to get your trend data so that you can actually, have some type of data to adhere to. But some of this might be a good presentation in the future. And I'm speaking of all the monitoring data and what we're seeing after, say, a year and a half, 2 years from now. Definitely, we should have some good data.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there, the sort of part two of this project, particularly with the potential benefits to water quality as a result of this hydrological restoration, would be a great thing to cover. And then all the ecological, biological benefits that result from that, as alluded to earlier with the fishery studies. All of that would be great. A great part two, I think, for
I hope to see improved water quality, flushing, and then in correlation to that, some improved fisheries.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. Well, I appreciate everybody's time, and I guess I can hold on until if there's any more questions.
Sure. We got a few minutes left. And thanks so much, Zach. You got a great comment here from Nick. Really cool project. I'm glad you're making it happen and sharing this information. So yeah, I definitely look forward to hearing the continual follow-up. As Rosemary mentions, the continuation of this project would be great each year or every other year. So, it would be really cool. 2022, that's 5 years post Irma. And we're seeing the changes now, and it'd be really with regard to what you just showed with the red mangrove response, and it'd be cool to see if the other monitored variables in water quality and biological indicators are responding as well.
Oh, great idea. Rosemary just suggested that this should be a graduate's field trip.
Yeah, that would be another good one too. It's real easy to do as well.
Yeah, and if we wanted to do it on site too, or if you wanted to do a field trip, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Cool. We will take that into account. That'll be a great follow-up for one of our future field trips.
Yeah, that would be a great graduate trip.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks for that, Rosemary.
Well, thank you, everyone. We're nearing 1 o'clock. Vincent and I want to thank you all for participating in this year's webinar series, and hopefully we'll see you early next year for the next installment.
Yeah, and if anybody has any other ideas, feel free to email us, and we'll put all that together and bring you this our next round of webinars for 2022, I guess. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach. Great presentation.
Thank you.
So, Bill, I think to address your comments, red mangroves, we know that there is sort of a northern expansion of mangroves statewide and sort of even into other states. While water depth might be a limiting factor for where mangroves can occur, I think that it's more likely the number of cold freezes a year tends to be sort of that definer of whether or not you're going to see mangroves. And so with climate change and seeing fewer freezes a year, we are seeing that sort of northern expansion of mangroves. And it's becoming a problem in certain areas in the state where traditional salt marsh species are starting to be sort of taken over by mangroves. So, but I think if you're planting them and you want to have them, I don't think you'll really have a problem. If they establish themselves, especially at a young age, and they're continuing to grow and thrive, I don't think you'll have a problem with them being flooded out.
Yeah, and I think you could take a look at neighboring areas where mangroves might be successful, and just take mental notes of how often they might get exposed. Tidal variations